Do you need to shorten your jeans but want to keep the original hem? Well, you've come to the right place. On today's topic of stitch and tell, I will show you just how to do that. Here is a list of supplies you'll need: the jeans you will be hemming, dress pins, a measuring tape, a gauge ruler, a seam ripper, and a pair of embroidery scissors. You will also need hand sewing needles and a thick thread to use. I prefer to use wax thread. You will also need a heavier needle when sewing with denim. I'll be using a size 16. Once you have already pinned the desired length of your jeans, I would suggest taking the measurements of the inseam and side seam of the jeans. That way, if you do make any mistakes, you do know what the finished length needs to be for this particular pair. Line the measuring tape up at the very top, bring it down to determine the desired length. So now that we've determined how much of the jeans we're going to cut off, let's go ahead and measure that amount. That measures 2 inches. Now you don't just want to cut off 2 inches because you want to keep the lip on the original jeans. That lip measures a 1/2 inch. So because that lip measured a 1/2 inch, you're going to move the fold line down a 1/2 inch. When doing so, your new amount should equal 1.5 inches. We pretty much just minused a 1/2 inch from the original amount. Now that you have your new amount pinned, which should equal 1.5 inches, you need to place it under the presser foot. You need to line up the needle with the edge of the lip. It does not need to be on the lip. It needs to be right on the edge. Next, you need to place the jeans under the presser foot. When doing so, the best place to start is at the side seam. You want to place the needle right at the edge of the lip and make sure that the side seam and stitches both line up perfectly. Now that you have the jeans under the machine and the stitching and side seam are lined up perfectly, begin to sew. Do not forget to backstitch once you start sewing. Take your time and sew right next to the edge of the lip. Every so often, grab your gauge ruler and ensure that the amount equals 1.5 inches. Take your time when you're sewing. When you need to move the jeans towards you on the machine, keep the needle of the machine in the fabric so that things do not move around. Continue this motion of sewing until you have reached the end. Now that you've completed your sewing, you can see your stitching line on the inside. So what you're going to do next is trim the excess fabric. You're going to measure down about 3/8 of an inch and begin to cut. Now, if you have a serger or an overlock machine, this is where I would suggest to overlock or serge the edge. We will not be overlocking or serging the edge in today's video. Continue to cut all the way around until all excess fabric is removed. Now that you've completed cutting your jeans, you can fold it right side out to see what your finished project will look like. Next, you're going to turn the jeans back inward and grab your hand needle and thread. Thread the needle with 2-ply thread. Next, you will take that needle through the seam allowance of the jeans and put it through the raw edge you have just cut. The whole purpose of doing this is to make sure that the raw edge on the inside does not roll out while you are wearing it. Put the needle through several times to make sure it is secure. When sewing through both layers, make sure that the needle does not go through the right side of the fabric. You want to make sure that you're only catching the seam allowance. Put it through several times and tie a secure knot. Once you've tied off both sides of your tacking on the inside, trim any excess threads that you see. Where you see the raw edge, that is where you would have wanted to serge or overlock to make clean. Turn the pants right side out and lay in front of you. The last thing you need to do is grab your iron and iron on the inside of the jeans all the way around. Take your time when doing so to make sure everything is completely flat. Feel free to take the iron and press the very top of the jeans when finished. And there you have your shortened jeans with their original hem.